So let me start, and my first question actually is to Mr. Gunapala and Mr. Eassuwaren. Maybe Mr. Gunapala can start to ask, how would you define or describe quality education? What does the statement, every child has a right to quality education, mean to you?
Thank you, Rushika. First of all, I would like to thank Rushika and the organization for inviting us for this panel discussion. So, quality education as a broader concept, actually different education specialists and education persons describe in different ways. But basically it talk about the development, children's development in both cognitive and non-cognitive skills, including academic and non-academic skills, knowledge and skills. So when we discuss about quality education, so it's actually how we define every children should have a quality education. So regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, and socio-economic background, disability, regardless of any of these, every children should have skills in literacy, numeracy, and life skills, socio-emotional skills, and different skills like ICT and all. So when we talk about access to education, so yes, as a country, Sri Lanka, we are in a good level, kind of similar to a developed country. Most of our children, they have enough access to education. We have a lot of schools. All the children can access any of education, any type of education, especially school education. But as a country, we have a lot of issues and gaps in quality of the education. So how we will kind of organize our education program and education system to support the development need of the country, and how it create the peace and harmony in the country, and how it contribute to the overall development and to create a peaceful country. So in that way, we have kind of gaps, as I mentioned, how the resources are distributed, how the children get kind of at least minimum standards in education. So in the quality education, actually, there are a few dimensions we talk about. First one is a quality learner who has enough kind of nutrition and health conditions to attend actively in the education. That is the first one, quality learner. The second one is quality learning environment. It talk about both physical learning environment as well as the psychosocial environment as well. How the teaching learning process happening in the schools, and also the facilities what we have in the schools, and how the teacher kind of collaborate with children, how the learning process going, and how the children interact with the other children as well as with the teachers. Like that, in learning environment is also another critical component in quality education. The third one, we focus on learning process. again, that is also very important, how the teachers receive training and capacity development, how they get feedbacks, how the teachers are monitored, and how that and supported. So those areas, the teaching learning process and the content, how our syllabus and the modules and teacher training and the teacher's guide have been organized. What are the critical skills we are looking in our education? So that is also important. The final one is the learning outcomes of children. How the learning outcomes contribute to the country needs, the development needs, as well as to the economy, how it create the harmony and ensuring the well-being of children. So those kind of things. In that way, there are five core areas, dimensions, what we are talking in quality of education.
Thanks, Jagath. Maybe I can ask Mr. Eassuwaren to add. There's one mic here as well. So repeat the statement to say how would you define or describe quality education, and adding on to from what Jagath also mentioned, what does the statement "every child has a right to quality education" mean to you?
So my answer would be a lot more practical, because I know that the other panel members have far more experience in.
We're not expecting a technical answer.
That's good. The main way we look at it is we do have a foundation that goes out into schools with limited infrastructure in and around the Colombo area. We work with several schools in the plantation sector as well. And the way we try to approach it is, how do we give the child the maximum exposure to opportunities? So whether it is in terms of learning, of course, to make sure that they're able to go through school without hindrances, they have all the right materials and the right equipment, and the motivation to go to school, as well as once they get to an age where they start looking at the next step, whether they have the right type of guidance. So whether they want to go to university or whether they want to start working. Some kids drop out of school after O-levels, some go on to A-levels, some we have had kids in our foundation that have gone on to university. It's we're trying to understand what makes this difference. And it depends on, as he said, that it depends on a lot of factors, including the teaching environment in the schools, the family backgrounds, and how the kids have been encouraged as well. So for me, what determines the quality of the education is really the exposure to opportunities that they get and how they're able to move on in life and be able to settle and live independently. So that would be my answer.
Thank you. So I think my next question actually is to Mr. Gamage, who has an extensive experience in working in the plantation sector. So we've had some descriptions from both Jagath and Mr. Eassuwaren about quality education. What would you say are some of the challenges or barriers for children living in the plantation sector to access this quality education?
Thank you, Rushika, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Really difficult time that we have to battle on this important topic, but let us be alert on how best that we can deliver the message to the audience. Thank you very much for that question, Rushika. Let me address my views in terms of plantation per se, right? I'm representing Hills Plantation sector. With Kelani Valley Plantations, Talwakal Estate PLC, and Horana Plantations. Rushika, if you talk about quality education, that's a right? Now, in 1948, Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, 10th December at UN General Assembly, they have declared that every child has a right to continue their access to their education, right? In line with that, if you address the universal knowledge management cycle, where the access to data, data into meaningful information, and then to the knowledge. Right? Starting from that point of view, in respect of plantation sector, and getting example from our own experiences, to access the quality education, your question is the barriers, right? There are so many, but with the time availability, let me narrow down few, the important prioritized ones. The number one, of course, all will agree, the poverty, low income level of plantations. Obviously, you can't hide that, right? So we are always talking about not the individual income level, but in plantation culture, we are talking about family income, even though that comparatively it's lower than the other social profiles in the country. But poverty or the low income address the critical barrier to access to quality education in terms of the program cost and the other related materials. And also, main important thing is the resources, as he very clearly mentioned. The human resource, material resource, financial resource, all sort of resources are related to that. In plantations, the access through those resources are very limited for the students, right? And the other barrier is the quality of education, where they are accessing in the plantation environment, schools, and the other education institutes, right? In terms of quality, he clearly mentioned literacy, numeracy, skills, and everything include from the teacher, the material, curriculum, all sort of things. You can list down a lot, but it's actually national level problem. But if you narrow down into the plantation, it's really worse scenario, right? I was having an offline discussion with Priyanthie before we just start the panel discussion. Of course, we can see lack of quality teachers. There can be a lot of parameters to measure the quality of the teachers, but there's a tendency to send some of the new appointments to the plantation schools, where they have very less experiences, right? Working with that culture. Plantation is a totally unique culture to, within that environment. And also, sometimes it's our own experience to fill that gap, to ensure that all our children who are living in the plantation environment to get their, at least their basic education. Sometimes in our plantation sector, we have a very strong youth club network, where the youth involved in various activities, various development activities in our successful plantation culture, right? So we encourage them to go and teach some of the critical subjects like science, maths, and those things, even English, to the people. But the barriers from there itself, from the school itself is there. Right? So those are some of the things that we'll have to critically get into the stage when we're addressing these barriers. There are so many. And other thing is the barriers on the approaches, lack of approaches on the knowledge, sustainability, and value creation. That's a topic that we are not commonly talk about, right? The knowledge, you can gain knowledge, but you have to have strategy to upgrade or sustain the knowledge with the value additions. Where how best that we can gain this knowledge into the big box and to turn that into a sustainable way, how best we can get this knowledge into innovations, creativity, do new things. That is a lack in this country. We are not in plantations, as a nation we are suffering with that, right? So we are always going for the syllabus-based, credit-based curriculum, not in schools, even in the university, where I'm visiting lecture for most of the leading universities, where I'm debating with them. How best, this is where our country is at the moment, when we compare to the countries like China, Japan, there are success stories where the children are framing or reshaping their skills, competencies from grade 5 after 10 years. So we can talk a lot on that subject, but it's not that question. But let me summarize that. There are so many barriers, as I mentioned, but if we address these critical barriers, at least we can have some sort of user-friendly solution for this question. Thank you, Rushika.
Thanks, Mr. Gamage. So I think, adding on, I think my next question is directed at Mrs. Kodithuwakku. So Mr. Gamage mentioned a few of the barriers, including poverty, the lack of resources, especially teachers, untrained teachers, teachers in particular subjects. He also talked about a more very rigid curricula. Would you say there are maybe other barriers that you see as representing the Provincial Education Department? And what may be some of the reasons for those barriers?
Thank you, Rushika. Thank you for giving the Central Province this opportunity. And all the other colleagues, they have well addressed all the gaps and everything. And we have identified all the problems. I think we know the depth of these problems, but when we talk about, especially in the plantation sector, they are more vulnerable than the others, other factors or other strata in the society. Now, due to this economic crisis, it has increased so much. So, when we talk about in education in terms, when we talk about access, quality, we have the gross enrollment rate. So, as a country, we have a high 98%, but when we talk about this, especially in rural area zone, it is up to 95. So there we see the grave status. And also now all the other things are true, but now we see, especially we can see the students who go for A levels, a certain dropout from 9% to 12% dropout we can see due to this economic crisis, because most of the students or parents, they like to earn an extra income because of the poverty. So children don't engage in higher education, maybe primary education and the others. We can use certain measures or procedures for that, but for the upper level, because that is our future, that is the youth, they neglect their studies, or due to their barriers, they don't gain higher education, and as we discussed, they lead their life as unskilled labor. So that will be a problem in the future. And also, there is the other, first one is the socio-economic background due to poverty, then the next one is the school factor. As the others mentioned, usually when we analyze in the education field, we have much, when we talk about teacher capacity, we have very low skill and also deficiencies in Tamil medium teachers, especially in the subjects we need in this current world, science, maths and technology. For those A-level subjects, we don't have teachers in the province. Or sometimes we can't get the provinces from Muva or Sabaragamu. Also, we don't have those qualified teachers. So we have introduced the technology stream. The students, they have the capacity to enter the universities, but we don't have such teachers. And also these times we see students now, because now we have to address the learning loss. So teachers or schools, they prepare many materials, but the students, they don't have enough money or they don't have the means to gain those materials. So students are stressed because they have the textbooks and other material freely provided, but the other materials, if a family has several children, they can't access those materials because they are very costly, because the stationery is costly. And I think I have addressed your question.
Thank you, Mrs. Kodithuwakku. I think you also brought the dimension of, in addition, the cost of education supplies that have also gone up based on the recent economic crisis. So my next question, I think, is directed to Mr. Gamage and Mr. Eassuwaren. And the question is, how do you see your role as the private sector stakeholders contributing towards strengthening the quality of education and promoting access? Can you briefly share some initiatives your organization is undertaking or doing to address these challenges or barriers in accessing quality of education for children living in the estate sector?
Okay, thank you, Rushika, for that question. Rushika, why we need education? Education is to uplift the individual from one level up to his potential, right? You add in values from knowledge, experiences, and various other sources into that person, and we are trying to upgrade him to a full potential. Maybe full potential can elaborate in different scales. So, as a identified one of the most sustainable and ethical plantation corporate at the moment, here is Plantations. We have executed various activities in this category, right? We can list down thousands, but let me, with the time availability, let me list down what are our role. Your question is, what are our role as key stakeholder? Let me start with, okay, number one is, I would like to say, be as a key facilitator, our role as a key facilitator. How best that we facilitate our people or children or the youth to get the education, right? Now, for an example, I will take example during last pandemic crisis, where almost all the schools were, I think, very few days per year only opened the government schools. But fortunately, with the support of, we have a system within our mother company, Haley's, we call that DP Education, you know, that is a universal one. So we have absorbed that concept into the plantations. And all our child development centers, partly we have converted to give the education to the children in there. And also most of our estates, they have e-learning centers. We have converted all e-learning centers into the education. It's like schools, right? All because all our staff members, HR staff members, they are qualified. So we have given them to teach them, not the syllabus from the school, right? They are not competent to do, maybe, right? But we told them to teach these children on the life skills. That is a lacking part that we have observed in this plantation community. On the soft skills, hard skills, there are technical competencies. Even some of our managers, state managers, they have participated. Staff, they have participated. And as I told you, we have a very strong youth clubs within our estates. They participated. They came and did the lectures or the this thing. So that is one of the key example as a facilitator. And also within our framework, we have developed various courses with maximizing our relationship with the other universities and local and international partners. One is that Harris Plantations Technical Skills Development Program, where we have linked with TVEC, NITA, and also actually I must mention the support given by ILO Colombo office and EFC. We have deployed our own internally developed certificate courses, right, with very low cost. The lecturers are our own lecturers, internal resources, right? Our managers, directors, corporate heads, and all sort of people taken part as lecturers. The knowledge transferred as a facilitator. And also, we were the first company who have produced NVQ 4 level, supervisory level staff members with first ever skills passport in the country at the moment. So we use those people also to transfer their knowledge. So as a facilitator, a key role. And also as a partner for their education journey for this, our role as a partner for education journey. For an example, we all have experience of the long queues close to petrol sheds and fuel sheds, right? The schools were closed most of the time in the year. But what we did was, after that, suddenly they announced about the O levels and A levels, and suddenly the people had to, children has to ready for go for the exams and all. But no alternatives from the policymakers saying how best that they can travel from home to school, right? As a leading or a responsible corporate within the plantation sector, on our company funds that we have given the transport every day for these children. And also the evening we have given all our state level facilities for them to do their homework, studies, for them to get ready for the next day paper, right? That is another one area. And also the most important thing that, okay, you can do all sort of, I have taken only few, I can talk about the activities we did. But the most important thing was that our role as the key corporate mentor, because we always believe as a sustainable and ethical corporate that how best that we can sustain this knowledge and the value creation. So for that, we should have a very comprehensive role as a mentor, corporate mentor. How best that we can manage these children with their knowledge gain to transform that knowledge into meaningful activities, because end of the day that it has to produce results for them, right? So we were guiding them. Sometimes we identify them because within the plantation families, we are not expecting them to come and work within our estates, right? We are encouraging people who are good at education for them to go ahead with their studies in the universities, and the identified top talent from there, we again absorb back to our estates the vacancies. One of the success story that I was listening to the various panels in the morning, I was in the first panel as well. There's a myth saying that, okay, in the society, the plantation has certain barriers that but the children from the plantation workers can't go up to the management, right? In our plantations, we have success stories, right? Some of the plantation workers, children who have gone to the university, the graduates, we have taken them back as a management employees. Some of them are the assistant managers, deputy managers at the moment. They are performing very well. We are looking after them. So those are the things that I think I have taken 3 key roles as as a stakeholder in this to promote the education and sustain the education. Thank you, Rushika.
Thank you, Mr. Gamage. Again, really, I think the initiative to encourage everyone, your staff, to be an educator, I think was interesting. Mr. Eassuwaren, over to you.
I mean, in answering this question, I think I'll just lay out how we think about this whole process. There is, as a corporate that is trying to think about how we can do better for the kids in the plantation sector, there is a lot of confusion, because there are things that we can do that need, there's a sense of urgency to get accomplished. So things like, whether we provide school meals, or whether we provide them with books or bags. And then there is the medium-term things that we can look at, like we were talking a little bit earlier, and Madam was also saying that there is a lack of teachers, and that is also something that we can try and address in the medium term. And then, of course, there's the long-term view where the school infrastructure itself is crumbling, and there's quite a lot of infrastructure is crumbling, and there's quite a lot of work that needs to be done. So for a corporate that wants to get involved, you look at this and you think, okay, where do we start? Because the problem is so big. It is, and the more you dig in and the more you get involved, the more insurmountable it looks. But one of the things that we've learned is that we have to just get in there and start doing things. So we have a foundation, that is named after my grandfather, and there with the foundation, we're trying to provide scholarships where the schools recommend underprivileged kids to us, and then we take care of all their schooling needs by the basics, and providing tuition for them if necessary, all the way up to university if they want to take that path. The second thing that we're doing, and which actually exposed me to the seriousness of the problem, is that, for example, we're working with the school in the Lunagang area in the Uva province. So it's a Ramakrishna Hindu college, and there are, I think, it's a school of about 1,400 kids. And the science stream did not exist, which, quite honestly, again, being from a tea company, I didn't know the severity of the problem. And so we have been able to work with the school and sponsor teachers for them. And again, just looking at the figures, shocking figures. So in the Uva province, there are 172 Tamil medium schools, and there are only 3 schools that are able to offer science streams. And I'm saying Tamil medium because I have the figures for that, but I also know for a fact that even the Sinhala medium schools don't have the science teachers either. So within the Uva province, there are only 12 schools that are able to offer science. So all of these kids who are able to get 8 A's, 10 A's, and there are kids who are doing this, they end up going into arts and commerce. And not that there's anything wrong with arts, but we end up restricting and putting them into boxes that they might not be suited for. And in order to, should they want to go into science, they then have to go to somewhere like New Aurelia. And I was told that the costs can be 30,000 up to 30,000 rupees a month to go live, with boarding and so on. So that medium term help, I think, matters quite a lot as well. And we're trying to encourage other exporters. And that's what I was telling Mr. Gamage as well, that if we know more about the type of work that is being done, I think other export companies would gladly get involved. It's actually, maybe we turn a willing blind eye to a lot of these problems, but we don't know in many cases what's happening. So just since 2018, we have been sponsoring science teachers in this school. Right now, we have had the first batch of 4 students who have qualified for university. One has, he's so confident of getting into medicine that he's trying his best, and that the other 3 are trying to get into 3 other science-based degrees, food science and so on. So for corporates, we are trying to figure our way in and out as well. How are we going to help these kids so that we can have some real long-term impact, as opposed to going and painting a wall and coming out.
Thank you, Mr. Eassuwaren. I think you broke down the problem in terms of the immediate and the medium and long term, and sort of brought out the issues, especially on restricting children because they have lack of access, especially in the science streams in the plantation sector. So my next question then is to Mr. Gunapala to ask, so other than these initiatives that were mentioned by Mr. Gamage and Mr. Eassuwaren, what does Child Fund do to improve quality of education for children living in the plantation sector?
Yes, thanks, Rushika, again. Actually, most of the panelists have discussed about the issues and some of the causes of these issues. So as Child Fund, we are working in New Aurelia with our local partner organization called T-Field Child Development Federation. So we actually address some of the issues most of the panelists have discussed. So the first, I'm going to talk about mainly 4 projects in a summary. So we implement a program called ATLAS, that stands for Active Teaching Learning Approaches in Schools. So one of the issue we have identified in most of the plantation schools, children who are coming to schools, they are not actively engaging in the teaching learning process. They are physically be in the classroom, but they are not actively engaging. That issue actually badly impacted on their education performance level. So we introduced this ATLAS methodology to teachers and also the primary education professionals to get children engaged in the teaching learning process. That gives opportunity to children to improve their competencies. So that's one thing we are implementing. Mainly, one of our assessment finding was nearly 30 to 40 children. It was in 2015 we did this assessment. Nearly 30 to 40 children, percentage of children, they are kind of neglected, in a term like neglected in the classroom. So they are coming to schools, but they are not engaging. So at the same time, we identified there are again 30% of children, even in lower secondary grades, they don't have basic literacy and numeracy skills. Again, that impact on their higher education performance as well. To address this, we introduced this methodology to get the active engagement of children. So we see this as a kind of sustainable approach. that we can implement in the schools, in the plantation. That is one project. And another program, so we actually in the Atlas, as well as in most of the education programs we are doing in the plantation, we very closely work with Provincial Ministry of Education. So they are the main part of this program. So with them, the second program we are implementing, as most of we know, most of the students in plantation schools, they are not qualifying for the A-levels, as most of the panelists correctly said. Again, nearly in some of the schools, 70%, some of the schools in 50%. So that's kind of average in plantation, most of the plantation schools. So so to address that, so we develop a kind of program with the Provincial Ministry of Education to support the children who has this kind of issues as an additional support to improve their maths and language skills. Without having basic skills in language and mathematics, they can't perform even in other subjects as well. So we are doing a lot of work with them, with the Provincial Ministry of Education, to address that as well. The third one, as most of the panelists said, when we compare with the urban and rural settings, again the plantation, the children, they don't have a lot of alternative and supplementary education opportunities. So we have a community-based child resource centers. The children can come and further study after schools and in the weekends. So in our child resource centers, we do some additional education programs, like improving the English language and ICT skills of children, basic literacy numeracy skills, as well as the socio-emotional skills. That is another program. Finally, we are planning to pilot another program in the plantation called school-based violence prevention. So although we say this as school-based violence prevention, we take the school as a kind of entry point to improve the skills of children in socio-emotional learning as well as self-protection skills. And we are working with the educators to improve their classroom management skills as well as the well-being and violence prevention. And we are going to work with the parents as well. So we see all these programs are very important to kind of make a culture that all the parents and the community encourage their children to study. Thanks.
Thanks, Jagath. So my next question is actually to Mrs. Kodithuwakku. So I think the partners, both private and the development partners, mentioned many initiatives that they are doing in a more localized level. But we also know that there's been a learning loss that has been, with the extended school closures during the pandemic, and as well as the disruption of school days due to the economic crisis. This further has been exacerbated because of the communities who do not have access to remote or distance learning modalities, especially like children living in the plantation community. So can you briefly share maybe some strategies that the Provincial Education Department in the Central Province has taken to mitigate the impact of the learning loss, whether it be remedial action or whether it's a learning loss recovery that you also earlier mentioned? And are there any specific or focused interventions to address communities that have been most affected?
Yes. Now we have, first of all, we had to identify the students because around 2 years they were not, we have not assessed them. So we have to find, first of all, where they are. So first we conducted a diagnostic test for the entire province, not only for the plantation sector. And we have assessed the students where they are, their basic competency levels are. And based on that, we have provided, the ministry provided grant for us, and using that, we have instructed and we have prepared a guideline, set of guidelines, and asked the zones to identify the students and group them and address those basic competency levels, because otherwise we can move, we can promote them to the next grade, but that is useless. So first of all, nowadays we are conducting that based on the zones and also the school level. If the school is capable of doing that, they can do it at school level. And also, for these tasks, we are also getting help of other private organizations, as mentioned by the. I am aware of the T-field projects, that Atlas project and all the other projects. Apart from that, and also there, as I mentioned before, students, they lack the material. So UNICEF and also there's another organization called Zamzam. They provided us with stationery. So actually UNICEF provided the material for there was 3,000 students in the Nuwara district. That means the UNICEF was engaging in all the Nuwara district and also the Wilgamo zone for those students. And also with the donations from the Samsam, we can't actually, we have to think about the entire province, so we have asked their help for the other also the needed students only. Then the next one, in the Nuwara district, for as the remedial measures, we are conducting multi-level teaching. It is practiced there only at the Nuwara district. So based on that, we can promote the level of the students, performance level of the students. And also we have done as a pilot project, we have selected the students from the schools, from the teachers. We identified the students where we can say we identified the students who will they predict they will fail the exam in this O-level. Now still the results are not released, but we have identified those students during that COVID period, and around the province we have created 19 centers. We have called that program ELAB, Emergency Accelerated Learning Program. We have grouped those students, and we have for the 19 centers, there were 2 in Nuwara district, Tamil and Sinhala medium. We grouped those students and we asked the students to learn what the subjects they like. Not the subjects given for us. They selected the subjects. They thought my results would be like this. So I will learn these subjects to get another C or S. So we provided resource persons and material with the help of the Zamzam organization. And as a pilot project, we did this. Now we are waiting their results, but we think the students learned without any uniforms, and they could come as they wish at the schools. But actually, now we are going to practice it again for the next year. And also there's another program. We also selected students who faced the GCA level last year, and also this year we have done that. Those students who are at the risk of failing one subject. They can pass 2, but they are at the risk of failing one subject. So we have selected them. And we have gave them residential facilities. There's a center in our province. And we have around 2 or 3 days they were there. They discussed papers, and we did that. I think last year due to those measures, our A-level results, we have come up from 2 provinces. We were at the 5th level, seventh level. Now we have moved up to fifth level. We are thinking now we are going to, actually we are going to do that again, because we think actually they like because the teachers or the resource persons were different, and we catered the needs, because we have to identify their interests, and they were free from other factors because there were no family pressures, the environment was different, so they liked a lot. And also there's another one I will add, the many organizations helped us in this school meal programs. It is a continuous program. I don't exactly remember this organization donated this, but mainly they provided with us many commodities, food supplies, or sometimes they gave us dry food rations. So now these vulnerable sections, we use those commodities. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kodithuwakku. So that brings me to the final question. And I think that question actually is to each of the panelists. And it is clear that many, whether it's the provincial education department, whether it is private stakeholders or the private sector engagement or development actors, maybe individuals who are not maybe sitting in this panel, but out there are doing many, many different initiatives to increase the quality of education and provide access to children living in this sector. So how do you think you can strengthen the collaboration to jointly ensure the right of children to quality education in the TS state communities? Could you share maybe one or two key recommendations you believe are most important to scale up from the initiatives you are currently implementing? So I will open it to any panelist to start who would like to start. Okay.
I think these interventions, they should be a continuous process, because 1 year we introduce something, and if we stop it, these children or these students, they can't, then for the next year, they are helpless. So we have to provide a mechanism with the help of all the organizations, a sustainable one. That is not just by giving them supplies. I think as I will represent the education field, I can't actually say because we see the family environment of the student is more important. Now, if he or she has a safe, protective family environment, all the other problems can be overcome. So when I was talking with another colleague of mine, he said now students, they prefer, if they work by morning to around evening, they can earn 1,500 rupees so per day. So they don't like to come to school during the harvesting season. This is mainly, they are in the Nuwara district. So these students, their school attendance is not continuous. So they can't, they can't, because now we have to deal with the learning loss, and also we have to train students to go to the other grades, and we just can't say, we just can't all the time, we can't postpone the exams. We have to tally up those things, and we have to get into the earlier life back. So we see that we have to get together and find a strong mechanism to improve the livelihood of these families. Then if the livelihood of the families are secured, we can I think we can address the other problems of the students, because mainly now we see the family is shattered because parents, they go for another jobs. Now even with sometimes they leave the family estate, so they move there, so they have to live with the grandfather or grandmother, so their generation gap is very high, and they are not aware of these things, new things, because now the children actually, as we mentioned, we don't actually need the basic numeracy and literacy on not only sufficient those skills, we have to indicate the other skills as ICT or creativity. There are many skills, but we have to give those skills through the basic education. That is the main means. So I think we have to get together and provide a secure livelihood which is sustainable, and also there is another one good aspect we found. We have to provide the skill of self-learning in the students. Then they will go beyond our reach. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kodithuwakku. Over to Mr. Gamage.
Okay, Rushika, let me summarize my views on this. Topic is education, your question is expectation. Before we talk about expectation, we all have to understand the mega trends at the moment in front of our eyes, right? If you analyze, now almost all the corporates are working towards this 2030 sustainability agenda, right? Now, what are the mega trends that international researchers have identified at the moment, and they publish their findings? For an example, I'm coming to a question, Rushika, but give me 1 minute to give this background, right? If you take about aging world, right? In 2030, it is expected that over 60 years, people will be, there will be estimated increase of 45% in over 60 years people in 2030. That is your aging world. You have to accept that. And the other thing is the boom in Asia, right? We can understand the trends from west to east now. At the moment, the recent analytics shows that the worth of middle class in Asia is in 2030 expecting to be at USD 10 trillion, right? And that is represented two-thirds of global middle class, and that is a trend. And also, if you take about cognitive tech, that we are shifting from automation to intelligence. You are talking about AI and all, rather than you're just talking about automation and various other stuff and all, right? And the most important thing is the eco-renewal. We are talking about the, now we can understand the shift from crisis to circularity. The demand for food in 2030 will expected to be increased by 30%, water 35%, and energy 50% almost, right? So those are the basic mega trends at the moment the scientists have identified. And the other part, the proportion of the children or the youth in this education portfolio, right? Rushika, at the moment, for an example, in our company, nearly 39% is Gen Y, millennials. As we already know, their expectations are totally different from other age profiles, right? They are IV savvy, and they are detailed into the information. They are the people who are questioning a lot, and they are thinking about the work-life balance and all sort of stuff, right? Totally different people. Right? So we have to work in future with these people. There is no exception in the plantations. I personally don't like that to talk about education, leaving plantation aside, because they also have to work parallelly with the world change. So how best, as a responsible and ethical corporates, how best that we can help these people to come into this model, not to talk about the education, leaving them and the mega trends with the other profiles of the society. So we have to work out. Maybe it's difficult. Maybe if I'm talking this, you might argue, okay, how best that we can, we are talking about literacy, numeracy, and various levels at the moment, how best that we can talk about mega trends. But can we forget this profile? We have, because they are doing a lot of work at the moment. Why can't we? There are a lot of stakeholders there. We need a common platform to discuss this thing. Otherwise, we all are playing isolation games, right? Isolation agendas. It has to come to a common table. Allow data to dance on the discussion table, right? Not to hide on that. So I think we all, the state, private sector, NGOs, all sort of people have to come into one table to discuss and formulate a national level agenda to run this. Then that will be sustainable.
Thank you, Mr. Gamage.
Yeah. Adding to the kind of inputs given by the two panelists, so I would also like to mention the same things what you all are talking about. So addressing the kind of structural issues we are seeing in the plantation sector in education, that is very critical, because giving a kind of program or kind of interventions, seeing the issue in the upper level, that won't be successful and sustainable. So I am focusing again on the teaching learning process, how we can improve the teaching learning process of schools, because the other things, the contents and all the other things, that is similar for all schools in Sri Lanka. So how we can engage and give inputs to improve the teaching learning process? It can be teacher capacity building, it can be giving enough resources, as most of them mentioned, ICT resources, digital learning facilities, and teaching learning materials, reading materials, so those kind of areas. So to get the active engagement of children in education, that is very much important. Giving kind of solution to seeing the issue in a upper level, that won't be sustainable. So that is one suggestion I am having. That is an area we all need to work together. That only gives sustainable solutions to address this issue. Another aspect, as most of the panelists discuss, so we can't still talk about the basic things, as Madam you correctly said, to match the economic needs and requirements. We want to get the engagement of these children in the other levels as well. So giving the ICT and English language. So this can be, again, we can say kind of skills that we are talking about primary level, but it is a major issue in the plantation. So how we can work together to improve their skills in English and other languages, as well as in ICT. So that is another area we all need to work together. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Last but not least, Mr. Eassuwaren.
Thank you. I think, you know, as when we're talking about things like the megatrends, it draws upon, again, the confusion that the private sector feels on how to start addressing this huge problem. The main thing is, as the other panelists said, we have to get together and at least initiate the discussions. There are some forums that are doing this, but working with the Tea Exporters Association, I mean, one of the decisions that I've made, you know, just listening to the other panelists today, is that I will, and with our company, we will try and convene a discussion specifically based on education within the plantation sector. And I mean, I will reach out to your team and the other panelists as well, and we will try and at least, you know, bring this conversation to all stakeholders, because it's very obvious that some stakeholders are feeling the pain more than others. I mean, as exporters, we sometimes expect the plantation companies to somehow take care of this, and everybody blames them. And also, as exporters who are facing the outside world and who are doing the marketing, I think we do have a few success stories, like Kelani Valley's great work. I think we need to go and shout these out to the international markets. I think that's also a very important thing that we have to do. So the commitment that I can make on this panel right now is that I'll definitely set this meeting or roundtable up so that we can take it forward.
Thank you. And I think that kind of wraps up the discussion by the panelists. And I think just to summarize, there was, the acceptance for the requirement for collaboration, and that we are understanding that many are doing different things, but we need to come together, that we need to address the root causes rather than just the surface issues, that we need to really have a national level agenda or like a strategic plan, and that that these children living in the plantation sectors cannot be left behind in terms of, their participation in the economy of Sri Lanka, and the need for the family background, the home environment to be strengthened, as well as promoting more self-learning or autonomy among the students. So with that, I'm going to open the questions to the audience. Okay, we have Ahin.
And also a lot of the great initiatives that you're sharing. I just want to pick up on one issue that Mr. Eassuwaren had raised, which we also found when we had consultations, because the point that he had made was in Uva province, there were only 3 schools that had science streams compared to the number of Tamil medium schools. But we also found it's not limited to Uva province. When we had consultations with children and youth in the central province, southern province, this is ongoing, and particularly more so in so-called plantation school areas. So the question is basically to the Central Province Education Department. How is the department trying to address this key gap? Because it's maths, science, IT, English. These are key subjects for any student to go on to the secondary level. So what are some of the recommendations and actions that you are currently taking? Thank you.
Now, there's a project called SESIP. I think you have, it addresses 13 subjects. First O-level maths and science, and the other subjects, 11 subjects are from A-level subjects, not including arts, commerce, bio and maths. So we have selected 94 schools as the pilot project, and it, then there we have those schools. We have to each year we have to reach a certain DLI. So there we try to deploy the teachers. We have to, it started from 2021. So they are at the end of this year, we have to have achieved the target. In the O-level sections, we have to have at least 70. And in the A-levels, we have to achieve at least 50. So by using that, by reaching that target, now we have planned several interventions. First one is we have informed the schools to recruit. We can't recruit, but they have to select, get the help from the retired teachers, and also there are some university students and also some well-wishers, those who like to pay extra, and also the SDS if they are willing, and also we have actually given a grant for the school. So we have given necessary instructions to, if they can use resource persons, and they can get, but not 100%, they can address that gap. And also we have actually informed, because we can't recruit the teachers, because in our central province we have to adhere to the cadre regulations. When we calculate the cadre, there is more cadre, so that problem is there. But we have addressed, we have informed all the authorities that problem, and they are very much they are aware, and they try to address this problem. And also we are training non-ICT teachers to teach that subject. Likewise, we have trained those other teachers. They have the methodology, so to teach other subjects. These days we are doing that currently. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there was a question up front first, and then maybe.
I'm Ravi Kandaya from Foundation for Innovative Social Development. Thank you very much for the insight you all given to the education system in the plantation sector. My suggestion is that if the education to be any meaningful, it should be employability. If you can't find employment with the education that you have, the rest falls apart. I think I would like to give a very mundane example where I live. A milkman comes in the morning, he pronounces Kiri, Pal in both languages so perfectly so that, his milk sells. And if you try to teach him how to pronounce the word Pal in Tamil to another person, it's extremely difficult because there are 3 Las in Tamil. Right? So, I mean, that's the crux of the matter. Because all of education, at the end of the day, should bring employability. Otherwise, this all the good work that we do will have little effect on the thing. As you all mentioned, I am very glad to know that you all are working, I think, child fund on this mathematics, English, science. Because our average is somewhere in 50, 20, 30 range. And the world is expecting STEM education. I mean, the gap is unimaginable. And this is where we are, whether we like it or not. And today, knowledge is a thing that, is available any place at any time, just press of a button. But the language, it's in English, whether we like it or not. Maybe in Tamil, maybe in Sinhala, you get cinema, political gossips and whatnot. You will get it. But if you want it, you need English. So, I mean, these realities should be driven home. And people should understand what it is. And the time to come, I think Sri Lanka will have to import people from other countries for these technical jobs. Whether we like it or not, it's going to happen. So it's high time we wake up and do something. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe I can move to the last question before we wrap up.
So my question is to Ms. Kodithuwakku. So I think there are some deep-rooted social challenges in this community, baggage, you can call it. So let's say money management. Alcoholism is an outcome, money management, then acceptability, self-confidence, so many others. Do you feel that the national curriculum, leave it as national curriculum, fits all, but in these specific geographies, there should be some added components brought in? For example, environmental awareness, because you're managing the entire water pool for the country, then climate-related stuff, food security, and also the things like money management, which will improve the community with time, where the kids can actually be the change agent, where they take the message home. Otherwise, I wonder whether with all the NGOs activities being done thus far, whether it's really been impactful when you're talking to a 60-year-old person to change his or her behavior suddenly. So could the kids actually be change agents, and can you really use that as a strategy?
It is a very good idea. It's a very good idea, and also I agree with you on that. But in the national curriculum, those things are included. There may be variations in how you deliver them and how one accepts or understands them. Everything is included in the curriculum, but I think we need to address our parents also. But in that society or that if we think about that sector. Normally, when we compare it with the other parts, the parents have also a low they are less educated. So, I think we can get your valuable idea into our considerations, and we can include. Normally, when we conduct a program, first we inform the parents first, because parents should know what we are doing with their children. Mainly, as I mentioned earlier, the ELAP program. First, we ask parents to come, and we inform parents. These are the things we inform your child. This is the syllabus and everything. But I think we have to address your problem also. We will get some measure to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. So this brings us to the end of our session. So I just want to thank both the distinguished panelists and our great audience also And we hope that these discussions will continue as we collaborate to improve the access to quality education for our children. Thank you.